Hello, my name is Genesis Flores, and I'm here to present my senior defense, which I titled Same World, Different Lens. And the reasoning behind that is to really emphasize my different perspective that I gained here at LAUSD. And a little bit more about myself is that I have been in the design pathway for the past 4 years. And the reason why I chose my design pathway was to really articulate my skills as a designer, as I have developed my passion for the arts at a young age. And then in the center there's my senior portrait. And for my future plans, I plan to attend UC Irvine and major in computer science. And for my thesis, I am going to prove that my development over the past 4 years have been essential to my transition into young adulthood by demonstrating skills such as the ability to collaborate and lead others in projects, hone my attention to detail, and exhibit self-perseverance. And for my first artifact, I have my arts artifact, and I chose to use the Culture Classes Chavez Ravine production, which was this fall production for this school year. I personally took on the role as costume designer, and I will discuss the process of creating my pitch with my production team, as well as the process of becoming a lead designer. And a little bit of backstory on Chavez Ravine is this is about the forced removal of Chavez Ravine residents in order to build Dodger Stadium. And although this was an emotional story, it was also a satire and had magical realism elements within it as we travel from the 1940s all the way to 1981. And so the purpose of this project was to demonstrate my capability in collaboration as a production team, which included a team of 3 of costume, lighting, and set designer, while individually completing a set of requirements. The task for me personally as a costume designer was to create mood boards based on the requirements and the director notes given. And as a whole, we did a 10-minute pitch presentation to a panel that included the director of the play. And the skills I used was to analyze and interpret text into my mood boards, as well as work with different people in different areas of design. And the whole process of this pitch panel was to firstly do a script analysis, then do research, then do 2 rounds of presentations, and then with my final designs. So for my script analysis, I created a very detailed timesheet that had different components of each scene that broke that down in detail. And what I used most importantly as a costume designer was the synopsis and the designer notes, which reminded me of the important moments that I had to incorporate in my designs, as well as, stage directions that were included in the script. For my research, these are mood boards that were included in my presentation, and I obviously used script analysis and the director's notes as reference. For example, the residence slide, the director emphasized having the residents use sepia tones, so I incorporated that into my designs. And within these mood boards, you see pictures of people of the time period, as well as color palettes and patterns, and a quote from each character to really emphasize my decisions on my images. And then after the process of 2 presentations, I got selected as lead costume designer. So I stepped into the role as a collaborative leader, and I led, organized, communicated, collaborated, and supported others, including actors and designers who were working for this production. So on the first picture on the left, you see me taking measurements of actors, which I coordinated time so I wouldn't interfere with their rehearsals. And in the center, you see 3 racks of costumes. There's a rack at the edge, but you can't really see it. But this was a very large ensemble of 20 plus characters, and each of them had different characters to play. And so I had to emphasize, think of quick changes and all that. And last picture, you see notes that I took on opening night during Act 1, and basically all these costume adjustments that me and my team needed to do during intermission in order for Act 2 to go even smoother. The challenges for this, especially being a large ensemble, was having a limited inventory and making sure that the actors were comfortable, because I really wanted to emphasize that, as they did a lot of walking and dancing and all those elements. And then these are my final designs. As you can see, the translation from mood boards to final looks. This is Maria. And as you can see, Maria has her hair done. And I collaborated with a hairstylist who was also a fellow actor here at LAUSD. And I basically emphasized that although most of these actresses are playing women, and to keep a time period, I also wanted to emphasize some of these actresses also played male characters. And this is Manazar, who you just had a panel with. As you can see, they look amazing. And this is Dodger Dog Girl, rendering from final looks, as well as the entire ensemble, very large cast. And as you can see, I incorporated elements of sepia tones as well as my own vision. And I also like to mention that the cast of Chavez Ravine went to a seminar in San Diego of 600 people with my costume, so little pat on the back. And then the LAUSD outcomes that I hit were innovation and collaboration. Innovation because through the process, innovation is described as a set of pathway skills to execute artistic vision, and I did that through the entire process of my designs. That included mood boards, research, all that. And then collaboration, I collaborated with my initial production team, and then I collaborated with the designers and actors of this play, and I make sure that my actors were comfortable, as well as led other fellow designers into executing my ideas. And the connections that I have for this are in design. I recently got selected for my intellectual property design, which I will lead a team to execute my ideas while also being collaborative and having their ideas shared. And then in my economics class, I have a group project that I used my design skills to create this game card idea to emphasize financial literacy. And in my internship, I used my construction skills that I learned in design to work on my latest art piece. And metacognition, as I experienced this position and task as a costume designer, I found that in my grows, there was definitely a different level of effort that everyone had, and I had to work around that, as well as working with different schedules and finding my voice as a leader. However, I also noticed my glows were that I fulfilled my ideas and I was attentive to the detail of the costumes, and I created a cohesive wardrobe for a very large ensemble, and I kept my open-mindedness as a leader. And my plans to improve is to put myself in more leadership positions and know when to assert my voice as a leader and collaborator. So like as I said, my recent design project will be my intellectual property, and that's a leadership position where I'm looking to assert myself as a leader.
All right, thank you. All right, good job. All right, so now we get to ask you some questions about what you presented. I want to talk about leadership because that seems to be the big thing that I'm seeing, that you are a good worker and then now you're thrust into leadership. What are you discovering about being a leader?
I think discovering that there's different kinds of leader, and the leader that I want to associate myself with is being a collaborative leader and having space for, other people to contribute and like implement my ideas with.
Okay.
I have a following up question to that. You said finding my voice as a leader. How do you do that?
As I said, finding my voice as a leader, I think I had trouble during the costume design, like really putting in, like making sure to like assert my voice. So now that like I have this other opportunity in design to put my like intellectual property, which is basically this like theme park amusement design that I have for Coraline, basically to know when to assert myself as a leader. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Oh, so maybe I wasn't clear enough. By finding my voice as a leader, basically, how do you? There's different type of leaders here at school, everywhere outside the world. So you're a different type of person, and there's a different type of person, and maybe both of you guys are leaders. How do you guys like connect, or how do you help each other to become leaders, both of you guys? How do you do that? 'Cause
I think understanding that, especially with being a part of another leader, like developing that relationship where we both understand where we are leaders and we could both, communicate towards one another in a very a collaborative manner, really helps emphasize and like grow the goal at hand.
Do we have more time? I'm curious, just because I know you as a student. Obviously, there's sort of the historical context for Chavez Ravine, which you mentioned to us. These, basically practical effects, and then also your creative vision. I just want to hear more about your process. Like when you were in the thick of it, how did you balance those historical necessities versus what you wanted to pull off, especially with something like Dodger Dog Girl?
So what I did, I had my mentor, my design teacher, Miss Wilton, and she kind of honed me in on my ideas. But I also during the process of this, I was just pulling out everything in that closet possible. So I didn't have enough, so I wouldn't have come short on an actor who needed this, an actor who needed that. So we had multiple, when I was pulling out costumes, we had multiple options. So I made sure to all right, this looks good, so they look good. It all comes out to play.
Okay, good. Let's move on to your second artifact. Go ahead.
Okay. For my second artifact, my academic artifact, I chose my Create Task application for my AP Computer Science Principles class taught by Mr. Galan from my fall semester of junior year. My application, as you see a screenshot of it, is it's centered around a record store environment that has 3 employees tell you 3 different album recommendations based on the genre that they like. And the outcomes that I'll be hitting with this is critical thinking and communication. So the purpose of this project was to demonstrate mastery with what we learned within that semester, as well as this is basically practice run for the AP exam, as the computer science exam has one half of it is submitting a application just like this. And then our task for this project was to create an interactive application on Snap Berkeley, which is a programming language that we used. And then the skills I used was coding, analyzing, code, problem solving, time management, and communication. My process was initially we had to draft a proposal and submit it to Mr. Galan, and once get it approved, we keep up a time log and then submit our final submissions, and then after that we did a write-up and reflection. So the prompt of this project was to create an original interactive application using Snap Berkeley, and we must use at least 90% of all snap blocks as well as an abstraction with an input window. So snap blocks, these are the list of the snap blocks that we were supposed to use within that project. And then on the right, you see an example of what the snap blocks look like, which are, this for example is the motion command blocks, which is in charge of changing the design of the program by making something move or rotating it. And an abstraction is basically a simplification of a long process. The example I'm using is baking a cake. You don't tell someone, oh, I went to the store, I grabbed the ingredients, I cracked the eggs, did all that. You tell them I baked a cake, which is basically what an abstraction is. And with the input window, it's basically saying it's adding a variable. So it's I baked a chocolate cake, I baked a vanilla cake. So before I get into everything, I will show you my final submission. So here the users asked to enter, and then the employees introduce themselves and the genre that they're into. And then we click on one of them to hear the album recommendations, and then they give us 3 different albums. And then by the end of it, you'll see a reset button pop up, and that loops our application back into the beginning. And then, so for my transferable skill, I learned through this was to divide the components of my the task at hand. So I divided this specifically through visual components and then into like the coding components. So here you see in my entries for my time log, I have like basically me gathering all the costumes for my sprite, and the sprites were basically everything you saw, from the buttons to the background to the employees to the albums. And then after I gathered that, I focused on the coding aspect, which by the end of it, I wasn't sure how to end my program as it ended abruptly. So I communicated to Mr. Galan and found that he suggested a reset button, and I implemented that within my code. And then as you could see, and as you saw from the video, once that was clicked, we went back into the beginning. And then how I applied my transferable skills is basically now I incorporate it into my like daily routine of like separating my classes and separating the different components and assignments that I need to do with a time log. And I also have my internship. When I was applying for it, I broke it down into a more easier process for me to digest. And then for my next evidence, I have my strength, which was my abstractions. I had difficulty initially. I knew that I was going to have difficulty with creating my abstractions because I wasn't really sure of how to do that. My understanding wasn't there. But I looked at other resources from past lessons and projects, as well as outside resources such as the internet, and I created 2 abstractions which simplified the process of the text. And then this other one was like the possibility of the user saying they didn't want to interact with the project, so I gave that option. And then for my area of growth, now from what I have learned, now with like another semester of computer science under my belt, as well as like having self-education outside of school, I learned that I noticed that I could have done an abstraction, but I was unsuccessful with creating it and implementing it into my code. So now what I would do now with what I know, I would have added 4 input windows into these X and Y coordinates to have it to simplify it and not need all this chunk of code for the same thing. And the LAUSD outcomes that I hit were critical thinking and communication. Critical thinking for the debugging of my syntax errors, so basically like the errors in the code and why would it run, I would like problem solve that, as well as think of my audience and know that they don't see it the way I see it, so using user-friendly visuals to communicate that, as well as demonstrating my ability in coding. And then for the communication outcomes, I went from a proposal to my final submission, as well as communicating clearly with my audience with visuals and written communication, and I reached out for input within my code with Mr. Galan. And then for my connections, this assignment really helped me with my AP Computer Science submission. As you see here, I made it way more interactive, and more recently I created my calculus final, which I did a website, and I coded the function that you see in a rectangle, and I implemented my coding skills within that. And then outside of this, I do further learning with programs like edX, where I get like lectures with different computer programs. And then for metacognition,
Okay. You can leave that up so we can look at it.
Yeah, please.
And so let's just go and start asking our questions here. My question is, where's the creativity in your organization? And that's a weird question, but what I see is a very strong suit of yours is that you know how to chart things, you know how to organize, you know how to put things in place. How does that help your creativity in this particular aspect? Why is that important?
It's important. Okay, so my creativity incorporated within my organization is important because, you know, especially now, because I'm communicating my ideas and literally proving that I deserve this. Communicating that creatively with like the organization really emphasizes my professionalism within that, and my presentation comes out more smoothly and flows for my audience to understand.
Thank you.
I'm curious, just from like you mentioned the abstractions, but what's just overall, like, what else was it, I'm curious, was a challenge for you in this project? Because I know you're a good student, but this was a big project, and you said you've grown a lot. So I'm curious what other types of like little roadblocks you might have run into or whatever.
So this was junior year, and this got assigned after we came back from Thanksgiving break. So we had like about 2 weeks to do this. So I really had to divide my time right. And as well, I was also a part of a run crew for our production, Into the Beautiful North. And so I had to really time manage my skills into that aspect. Like, okay, I like after school I can't do this because I'm at rehearsals learning the lines and learning my costume changes that I need to help with. And then after I get home, immediately go into like the aspects of my program, and that the division of like making it into smaller tasks really helped me into like not overwhelm me into like this workload. So, yeah.
I'm looking at plan to improve, create more intricate projects, explore more computer languages. I'm curious about that plan to improve. Where's that coming from?
As I stated earlier in my introduction, I am going into the computer science major, so I really want to like have a foundation before I head into college and explore more ideas. And the more intricate projects I make, the more I know where to improve upon before I get into college and as I get into college and seek further career.
Are you creating more apps right now?
I have like in the development process, I have like this idea of like creating like a blog where I could incorporate like my art process and like using that with like HTML and like all that sorts of things. Thank you.
Let's go to your conclusion.
All right. So, okay, for my final conclusion, I'm stating that my time here at LAUSD has been very educational, academically and within myself. And I just want to reiterate that I take away this experience very positively as I transition into college and as I have overcome many challenges during my time here. And I have learned to surround myself with good people and focus on my future. And with the pictures, that picture of me with my thumbs up is actually the first day of school as a senior. And then I have pictures of the friends that I have who have supported me and over the past 4 years. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Genesis.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes. Ask questions. Let's see. I'm just looking at that slide of you. Is that you on computer?
Yeah.
Is that during pandemic land?
No, this was actually, I think this was during like our process of gathering stuff for Chavez Ravine. Like,
okay.
yeah.
Because I was about to ask you a question about returning to school and having to go through pandemic land. And what did you learn from that isolation to be where you are now, to be someone that actually is in a leadership role and people look at you as a leader now, you know? What was that journey like?
It was a very hard journey because like obviously pandemic times we were like isolated, but I still like once I saw like that we were coming back, I saw that as like an opportunity to like get more involved and like really like it changed us personally. Like I know like the transition into that was difficult, but as I like got into the rhythm of things, I sought out to look for like other opportunities. Like Miss McDonald, she got me my internship with Inner City Arts, and like I wouldn't have done that like pandemic times because I was so like in fear and like isolated within myself. And then like that whole process like really allowed me to like flourish and develop.
From between being a costume designer, especially like a lead role as a costume designer, and then being like an app creator, what would you say is the biggest connection, like skill-wise or process-wise, between those two activities?
I would say that the biggest connection between those two is obviously like the organization that you have to implement between both of those. And I would say like as I'm going into computer science, having like both left side and right side of my brain work is kind of a plus because you know, not everyone has that going into computer science. They can only do stuff, you know, computationally. And I actually recently had a work shadow day where I went to Angel City FC and I communicated that I was going to go into computer science. And the creative director there was like, as you're going into computer science and you're so creative, there's a rarity in that field to have both sides of your brain working like that. And she said that those are unicorns. They're like, there's a rarity. So like that really like reassured me in like the direction I'm going.
Mm-hmm. What's that part of you that can't believe you're here? That part of you that still thinks that you can't, that what you're doing is high level and people are actually looking to you for answers. How do you deal with, and I don't even say it's imposter syndrome. I do want to say it's more like, you know,
Like doubt.
yeah, the doubt.
I'm very doubtful of myself, which is kind of sad, but like I'm definitely working on it. And, you know, fake it till you make it. So that's what I'm doing here. There's like times where I'm like, am I really good enough for this? But like, and then I like let myself think like there's a reason they chose you, there's a reason this came to you, this opportunity came to you. So I'm just like taking it as with much as I can and learn as much as possible.
And where are you going to school? Irvine? Okay, great.
Do we have any more time?
Yes.
So I have a question. It's because your conclusion really was striking to me, especially the part about surrounding yourself with good friends and that kind of thing. I would say both as a leader in a lot of contexts and then also just like in a social context, what have you learned about the value of like surrounding yourself with good people or being able to rely on other people even?
Surrounding myself with good people, I think it's just the development of like a community where you feel safe and like you have the safe space where you could like talk about anything, where they can make you laugh and they could hear you. And then that like connects to me as a leader. Like I don't want someone who's gonna, excuse my language, half-ass the job. I want someone who's there for me and I'm gonna be there for them. Like give what I receive what I give basically.
Totally. Thank you.
Anything else?
Coming up.
Yes, go ahead, make a comment.
We had computer science together last
Yes, we did.
week. And for me, that was a really hard course. I don't know how you made it, but like, I'm impressed. You mentioned transferable skills. I didn't do that. That's why I got a bad grade in that class, or the AP exam itself, or the class. Well, it wasn't a bad grade, but like yeah, that's what I could have done better. Now that you're saying transferable skills, the proposal, I didn't do all of that, so I guess congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Okay, and this concludes your senior defense.
Thank you.
How'd you think you did?
I am very proud of myself, of what I've done. And this whole defense really, like, my presentation really emphasized, like, what I've learned here. And I'm just very proud of what I've done.
Okay, all right, there's a reason for that, okay? So I'm just gonna go over your scores. So for your presentation skill, you know, proficient, mastery of knowledge, advanced, mastery of loss of outcomes, advanced, metacognition, advanced, questions and comments, advanced.
Thank you.
So guess what that means?
I passed.
Yes. So yes, it was. You know, you're so. There's so much going on with you. The future is so bright with you. My thing that we want to sort of like, you know, really help you with this as a stepping stone learning activity.
Yeah.
Your presentation your design presentation for Chavez Ravine was probably one of the best presentations I have seen.
Thank you.
You come in here today and there's a little step back, okay? And that could be the doubt.
Yeah.
That could be, do I have everything? You could be actually thinking about the time. Who knows what's going on?
Yeah.
We really would like for you to always remember that part of that metacognition, that if you succeeded and mastered in one area, find out why you did.
Okay.
So you can come into here and become a master of the knowledge that you know so well.
Okay.
Okay? You said fake it till you make it. We just needed more faking.
All right.
All right, that voice up, that that confidence of trying to explain very detailed, complex computer language. We will get it if you are confident in giving it to us. Okay. I'm going, okay, I'm fine. I don't know, maybe I feel a little stupid, whatever. But if you give it to us confidently,
Yeah.
then it won't be on me. I'll just go, I want to follow you. And that's one of the things about being a leader, is to get people to want to follow you. Okay? So that's my note for you. Okay?
I also feel like that was part of me in high school, doubting myself. You know my background, 4 years in the U.S. My accent, I have an accent. I used to be like, oh, everyone's gonna make fun of me. I'm not gonna get far enough. But I just want to say that, as you said, fake it till you make it, basically. Then just keep going and believe it, basically, because that's part of me. I used to not believe it where I was, and I was like, how did I get here? Maybe it was a mistake, and it is not a mistake. It's not a coincidence. It's because of you. You have reached that level till you are right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to second what Addison said. You had all the presentation part that was your slides, beautiful. Had all the information, everything we want to hear. It's just like, I know that you know it. You know what I mean? Just give yourself a little bit more grace and a little bit more confidence there. You know what I mean? Take a deep breath sometimes, you know? But I think it was really awesome to hear you just understand these like big picture concepts and understand how these different lessons tie together. And I mean, even something like the time log, being able to not just get defensive about a teacher wanting you to be accountable for your work and that kind of thing, but go beyond and be like, I'm going to use this for myself because I can recognize how this helps me. You know what I mean? I loved your use of academic terms. Like when you said magical realism as an English teacher, I was like, yes. You know what I mean?
As the director of the show, I went, yes.
Yes, exactly, right? Like you said, I just think it's very it's an uncanny ability to be able to marry like cerebral and creative like things, and I think that's really cool. And I'm just it was also, if I can get like sort of sentimental for a second, I thought it was beautiful to hear you mention your friends. Partly because I know some of them and that kind of thing, but like the social parts of high school are in many ways just as important as the academic parts. And I thought that was so cool to hear you recognize the value of people around you, especially as someone who will be a leader in the future.
Yeah, you'll be giving them jobs. You know?
They'd be lucky to have you for a boss, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Fantastic. Yeah, anything you want to say?
I would like to say thank you for being my panel. Thank you for all the questions and the comments. I will definitely take this whole lesson, this whole journey, and like just put it into myself and like my confidence. And thank you.
You should.
Yeah, you can't fake answering a question. You either know it or you don't, and you know it. And that was great.
Thank you.
Congrats, dude. Yeah.
Thank you.